Okay, guys. Now, I wanted to make a quick little thing for the tower little program that we've been working on. Now, I've been tweaking around and things like that for the turrets because I want a little bit more performance out of the program, and I think I came up with a little solution for it. I got it up to 20 turrets, and I'm still getting 30 frames on my old phone. So I think this will work a lot better. Now I got rid of some scripts that was in here and things like that. Maybe in yeah. And we got some new stuff. We got some old stuff too. But we've got this spear filtering now and things. And I've got rid of some of the collision stuff that was a little bit more intensive on the profiler. So I was looking for some optimization options, and I think I came up with one. Now on our Canon script, we'll swap-y-do over here, and like usual, it never can find that for some really strange reasons. I have no clue. I don't do OBS, their stuff. So let's look at a few things. Now we have symbols, and this hasn't changed, and some particle systems for stuff. And I put the spear filter on there, which is a layer mask, for layering and stuff. And then I got this checker bool and updating bool. Now, it's really hot around here. Yeah, about 87. No wonder I'm dying here. But anyway, in the start method, we are subscribing to a delegate that's just in there for an update. Now, in this delegate thing, I have done some unusual patterning for it. Now, I get these timer and step ratio. You can change this to fire off every so many seconds. And all we're doing is in an update, we've got a float, which is our timer. Okay. I put 2 seconds as a default. And we're minusing time.delta time. This returns a float times from the last frame. So from frame to frame, it returns like maybe 30, 15, 20, or whatever. It's kind of frame rate dependent. Okay, so we've done that, but on this variable that's right here, this timer, if the timer is actually 0 or below 0, because we're minusing it every frame, then this will fire off, which calls step update, which is the delegate. So anything that's subscribed to this will get fired off, right? And you can do this, or you can do a event. Well, in all honesty, for this type of method and things, you should probably use an event. And that's what I'm going to do. It does not change it whatsoever unless you go into your other scripts. Like here, you know how we're plussing here? When you have it just a delegate, you can do an equals. But if it's an event, it'll give you an error because it's an event. So you cannot like mess it up and, override your existing event and be like, what the heck's going on? Very useful to do that. And on awake, we just make sure the static variable for this class is done. And that's pretty much our delegate right there. But the thing about it is, this delegate is not done every frame. See this timer? We're equaling a step amount. So whatever here on our value is, we can put at 0.5 for half a second or 3 seconds or 10 seconds or whatever. This is how many times our new method is going to check. But we'll get to that in a minute. And we have an update. This one is fired off in an update loop, which is another delegate. We don't throttle this one at all. We want the update and everything else. And to be honest with you, I have no knowledge of why you even have this. I don't even think I use this now. So let's cross it off and see what breaks, which is probably nothing. So I'll save. Now in our Canon script here, we've subscribed to this step one, okay? And this checker method right here is what's responsible for checking our, it's called a physics spear check, okay? What a physics spear check is, it's not a actual spear cast or anything else. It's part of the physics system, but it only checks this spear in itself, okay? So it's not an on collision enter or exit or any type of physics call on the physics engine except to check that something's there. It's a bool check. It returns a bool, okay? Bool, physics check. And that's all it's responsible for. So it does a true false statement. So you could use this if you really wanted to in some type of check like this, which, you know, this is what we do. So how do you use this? Okay, well, you do physics and you do a spear check. You have to have a spear for this one. There's a box check and there's other variances of this, okay? And the parameters for it is it needs to know a location. So pretty much probably where you're at exactly right now, or wherever the spear is at, okay? And I have a maximum range, which is the entire the spear has a radius. I have a float value where I at runtime I change the spear from like really tiny to a big number. Okay, that way it matches my range and I don't have to worry about it, you know, adjusting it into on the prefab or anything like that. So it's runtime. We don't have to fiddle with it. And then I've got the layer mask. And what the layer mask will let me do is filter out other elements of the scene. So remember how I was using the physics and trying to filter out using the actual physics little bool checks thing that's in the settings? Well, I don't have to do that anymore. I completely get rid of that. And it's just like the camera setup. I can filter out everything in every single layer except for one, which can be our enemy layer. So basically, the physics engine is ignoring everything. It doesn't do any calls until the spear collides on the inside of the spear with a collider from the enemy layer. So it doesn't care about my bullets, doesn't care about other towers. It calls absolutely nothing except the layers that we want. So this returns the bool, and it does that checks, which is really nice. And I tried this. Okay, I literally put 100 little tiny script and done this physics check in an update loop for like 100 of them. It's very minimal, very minimal. It's a lot cheaper than anything else that I found. Okay, so I'm using this bool to, and this check thing gets updated based on our step. Okay, remember in this manager, oh, we are using that. Whoops. But remember me going right here and telling you, hey, this is a step update and we can throttle this. Well, that's what I'm doing with this checker here. I'm throttling it every 2 seconds or every 5 seconds, or it could probably run every frame. It wouldn't hurt probably, but it wouldn't be exactly healthy because I don't see the point in checking this value every frame. I mean, come on, really? So I'm saying 2 seconds. Every 2 seconds, each one of these scripts will run this method, every 2 seconds. Okay, so if I have 100 cannons every 2 seconds, this runs, it evaluates this stuff, and there you go. Now, if our bool checker is true and our target is null, which we don't have a target, then we do this stuff. Enemy spawner, and this is a new method that you haven't seen yet. And what this method does is it returns a game object, okay? Get bad guy. I mean, I don't know any other way that you can do. But I had this little check in here that if this returns null, like there's no bad guys in a collection that I'm searching through, then it won't run and you do nothing. So if bad guy is not null, then we have a target and we set it up and we call this updating true. Okay. And what updating true is I have this small update right here. If updating equals true, then we do an update loop. Okay. So every single frame, just like you would any other script, this will do its update. So I was going to cast it out to the delegate and stuff like that, but my profiler was sitting there looking. It was all confusing and it wasn't giving me the information that I wanted. So I just put it in this update to make it easier to profile it, which it made it a whole lot easier. And we got our basic functionality and stuff and max range, blah, blah, blah. Well, if the target's null, then this is probably repetitive, but we probably don't need this. Well, actually we do, because these other evaluations, target is null or range is bigger than max range, or target is inactive because we use object pooling. Then we make sure it's null, we set our target to 0, and updating is false. So when this is false, we don't get any more updates. We don't do the targeting or anything like that, which targeting hasn't changed too much except for here. Okay, and I put this new variable here because before we was taking it from a dictionary for game objects. Right here we have a dictionary of game objects, and every single time I shoot, it evaluates a string, which comparing strings is expensive. Okay, in any type of operation, if you are comparing strings, very expensive. So I'm like, well, what I'm using the string for was to get a game object. Well, why don't I just have a variable for a game object? And that's what this is right here. The spawner is just a game object. So down here when I'm shooting and everything else, if this hasn't ran and gave a game object, then this one is used until it's filled in, which I was going to do it in the start and everything else, but This is part of our saving system that's going to be loading objects from a bundle and a lot of other things. So it's not exactly something that I probably want to happen immediately when the game is running. So I'm like, well, yes, no, okay, we'll just do a small evaluation here to, hey, if the spawner's not null, then it does this. I mean, technically it's a little bit more overhead, but it's not significant, like big time. It's two little if statements, okay? And the benefit from doing this is we're no longer comparing a string. Now, you're probably like, well, why don't you just do a variable right off the bat and do that? Well, I would, but the problem with that is if I wanted to do some type of saving thing where I upgrade my bullets to, let's say, a different bullet that does more damage later on, then I can't do it. Or I lose the ability to use asset bundles for that. Okay, asset bundles will do fine for, it's a prefab, and then it will be perfectly well with having a reference to the prefab inside the asset bundle. It'll be fine that way. But let's say I wanted to change it from a, just change the string. Well, I couldn't do it because I would have to recompile the asset bundle, to get the changes to merge, which that's the problem with asset bundles is you have to keep rebuilding them, so it's kind of a pain. That's one reason why I'm going to start probably moving away from using asset bundles until later on in like projects and stuff, but they are useful. I will give them that. And they are streamable and a lot of other things. But my newer FPS kit uses asset bundles like crazy. I mean, every weapon is an asset bundle. And then that bundle contains all the textures you'll use and other stuff. I mean, it's not exactly something that's going to be not usable. Well, like I said, it's just a small evaluation here. This is a lot cheaper to do than just to do this every single time. And I don't want to just pass in a game object right from the prefab and just directly drop it in. And actually, the reason why I don't do that is simple. Now I remember. This evaluation thing right here, this is coming from an object pooler. Okay? When I do this, it's coming from an object pooler. This is part of our save system that does asset bundling. Well, if I take this out and just do a game object, and just throw it in there and everything, then it might not work the way I want it to. But string comparing, never do any string comparing unless you absolutely have to. I've been doing it for a while now, and for some operations it's not that bad, but for like bullets and stuff like that, yeah, I'm steering away from it. Which I don't actually use physics bullets anyway in my FPS, but for this one I heavily use it because of bundling and things, which, like I said, we're getting away from doing it by doing this. But yeah, I mean, the this operation right here, this enemy spawner get bad guy, let's look at this. Okay, go to declaration. Okay, so let's zoom in. Okay, now on enemy spawner I changed it up to get away from certain things. I added a list because the actual bad guys, we use object pooling, so this wouldn't affect me too much. But if you weren't using object pooling for your enemies, you would not do this like you would think. Okay, and what I mean by that is every single time you go to search for a bad guy or something, you want to clear out your nulls, which then would run you a bunch of CG and stuff, and you wouldn't like that. Shifting and sorting a list and everything else is kind of a big no-no unless you absolutely have to, or you're not doing it very often. This evaluation, get bad guy, we're doing this on like every single 2 frames, so don't go sorting a list or something like that. It's bad. Public game object, get bad guy, which takes a transform and our range. Okay, so, and we're using this as we're just throwing up a temp game object, and this is a loop, simple loop, and if bad guy is active in our hierarchy, in the hierarchy, then we return it. Okay, and now in our game, for this, we could do other evaluations like range and other stuff, but I wanted to keep this function simple right now, which we're not even using range, so we can probably get rid of it, but for the most part, it works just fine. And I tested it out. It pretty much gives you a bad guy without having any issues. I mean, yeah, every once in a while it'll grab a bad guy that's ahead, that's beyond the range. But if you're thinking about it, is we're evaluating the range every frame, okay? So if it's beyond the max range, it'll just clear it out anyway. It will just basically return out of the function. And then spear check will be doing everything all over again. So it'll be doing a reevaluation anyway. So I was like, why do I even care? Right? I mean, yeah, it's getting all the way down here by that time and doing target checking and things like that, but it's not going to be doing, it's going to get here, and if we have a target, it does distance, and then it does this evaluation. If range is less than this, and then it skips out, and then it does these evaluations. Okay, so it technically doesn't even do these right here. Okay. And this is part of the old system. And then I did have it doing the update versus here, which we don't need. And then another thing is it takes the update and it turns it off. So it won't do this again for another frame until this returns true. Okay, so if this, we have to have an enemy inside there. And then most likely, if you have many, bullets and stuff like that in the, not bullets, but crud. If you have enemies, active, it returns the active enemy anyway. And most likely the active enemy is going to be pretty close to one of your turns anyway. So, it's kind of one of those iffy things, but it works. It works just fine. That's one reason why I didn't do anything more with it. Our save system, it's got its bundle stuff and it's got its saving and loading stuff, so it's not really changed. I will probably do some really advanced saving methods and stuff like that later for serializing, different types of stuff. But that's a whole nother tutorial, and plus it'll be generalized really like small anyway. So yeah. This is for our objects. Yeah. Yeah, you'll probably really like that part, and I'll be going over some of this other stuff, but here's the thing about it, and this is the reason why I'm like, this is a lot better than before, is on collision stay was being used, and on collision enter. On collision enter and stay, it's expensive. And the other thing about on collision enter and exit that you won't like is it's a mono function. Okay, it's a mono function like where's one that I could do? 2 point? Would that have it? Or did I delete it out of there? Okay, on collision enter is an expensive call because of a few reasons. This is the reason why I do like it, but I don't. On collision enter is a mono behavior. It doesn't care what is actually inside of your function. As long as it's got a collider, it calls it. Calls it. So every single bullet you're using, every single guy you have, every single tower, anything that's got a collider on it that's running around and collides with that trigger, it calls. So, let's say you have your machine gun that uses physics bullets. Well, even though it's a bullet and, it doesn't do anything, it's going to have a collider on it because you want it to collide with what you're shooting at. Well, because it's got a collider, it's going to call its function. So if you got a machine gun that's shooting like every 3 seconds, we'll combine that with like 3 different turns and they're just, just shooting away. Well, then you can easily have about 30 or 40 bullets calling this function every frame or every frame and a half. So then you overload your physics engine and it just completely cuts out on you. And you're like, oh crap, what's going on? Why is my frame rate like 0? And then you look on your physics engine and it does on collision enter is called 100 times last frame, and then the next frame's like 10, and then the next frame it's like nothing. And if you have turrets that are like next to each other, then you could have like 3 different calls happening all at the same time. So that bullet that's going across 3 different turrets, you'll have 30, 60, 90, and then it just stacks up. You overload your physics engine really badly. I mean, if you got a high-end system, yeah, it'll work. But if you're targeting for mobile, phone-wise, this is not going to be something that you want to use then. You'll want to use something of this nature or have some other type of system. Okay, over here. Like my spear check thing, which, is part of the physics engine, but it's really cheap. I mean, it's really friggin' cheap. Return true if any collider overlaps the spear, defined by the position and the radius. And the reason why this is really cheap, too, is, like I was saying, you can apply a layer mask and filter out so much more, and it's so much easier to work with as well. So it's kind of a little trick, and yeah, it runs every frame, but it's no different than your update that you have on a game object. If it's like if my target's null, this never runs right here. This evaluation never happens. So it's like, if this happens, blah. It's a really small, just exit out function. And like I said, with my step function that's in here, where I'm throttling it by every 2 seconds by my step amount, which, I put, that's what I put 2F here is for an initial amount, the beginning, which you don't have to do anything here, but 2, 5, 6, 10, if you want something that's better or whatnot, or instead of doing it in here, you could probably always do it in the tower script itself, right here. But I thought it'd be easier just to slap it into a delegate and have it happen for everywhere. But that's entirely up to you. Like I was saying, I mean, it wouldn't be nothing to take this right here and then do the evaluation inside of your turret. But I didn't see the point. I'd much rather have like some global one that goes, hey, boom, boom, boom. Because I was thinking about the multicast part of it. So the delegate will cast it out to like 100 objects easy, and it would be cheaper memory wise to have it do that than to have every single tower with 2 variables for each one. It's kind of like, would you rather have one script running that timer than have every single script in your game have 2 more variables and go, hey, then do this? You see what I'm getting there? Instead of because this is allocating memory like permanently in the system, so every single script that you've got of your tower is going to have these 2 more variables, which is more memory. Which if you're on the mobile, the phone wise, you don't want to pull more memory unless you have to. So there you go. And this is a delegate, so anything can subscribe to it. I mean, this step timer could be used for something else as well. Something that you need it to evaluate every 2 seconds. Which brings me up to a good point, which we could do to cheapen up our this fire time thing is less than time.delta time. This is evaluating something every single frame. To be honest with you, it may be more efficient to have this throttled. What I mean by it is how we're doing this for, well, it basically already is, but it's evaluating it in time.time. Which I don't really like it doing that, because if you do it by time.time, you're evaluating a number that's going every single during the life of the program. And what I mean by it is, the number keeps going up, so the evaluation would probably go up a lot more as well. So it may be just cheaper in the long run just to do what we're doing here with our timer. Which, yeah, I'm seriously considering that. Yeah, that would actually be really well. Because we're just subtracting all the time. Yeah. We could probably pull out a little bit more performance out of that. Which, if you're not, well, I should put it this way, okay? Time dot time is like this, okay? It starts off at 0, and then it will go to infinite, or to the life of the game till you exit, okay? And it's kind of sucky that way, because here's what it'll do is the whole concept of it, it goes 0, and it'll go to 1, 0, then 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5. And the problem with it is the problem with time is the comparing values in huge numbers is costly. The same problem is comparing strings. Do not do this a lot, or you will hurt your FPS rates and pull tons of CPU. There. I don't know how else I can explain that in whatsoever. So, yeah. So we are probably going to steer away from doing that. And it would be very easy. Fire time. Fire time is less than something. Well, we're going to have something else to compare it with. So, if fire... Actually, no. We're not going to have to. Actually, yeah, we are going to have to pull another value. Which is fine. I mean, I can live with this value because it's stepping and we're going to benefit in the long run anyway. So where are we going to do this? I think this should be part of the base class anyway, because this sounds like something that should be in the base. Fire time and then fire rate. Ooh, we have both actually. Okay. Alright. So we're already pulling that value anyway. We're just not using it. That's fine. Okay, so this code sucks. So we're going to exit out this, comment out this, comment out this, not the other button. This is old way that kind of sucks, but works. So, alright. Ooh. Yeah. So where are we going to put our thing? Actually, I think we should make sure that we are subtracting this. So if fire time is less than probably fire rate, if fire time is less than fire rate, then we should do that stuff, right? Right. And this will give us our stuff. Well, like I said before, we need a step method. So what I mean by this is fire time equals fire rate. Okay, that will give it more value and then exit out of this evaluation that's here. Okay, but there's still a problem. We need to subtract it. So we're going to go up to here to fire rate minus equals time dot delta time. Okay, so every single frame rate thing, you know, we're subtracting it, and then our fire rate happens. Much cheaper in evaluation. Kind of sucks that we're sitting there subtracting every time this becomes true, but we're not evaluating a big string or a big number, so it's far cheaper. Because like I said, this time dot delta time, after about 10 minutes, it could reach 1,000. So every single turret that's trying to fire, it's going to be comparing 1,000, which is 4 digits, okay? Which doesn't sound like much, but it's far cheaper to compare fire time to fire rate, which is 2 digits. So instead of 4 digits times by maybe 10 turns, okay, 4 digits times by 10 turns, that's 40. You're basically cutting that in half. So in the long run, you're going to be gaining that comparing rate by half right there, which will unload a lot of your CPU cycles. Okay, I'm pretty sure that you would understand what I'm getting at. It's like, which would you rather do? Juggle 4 processes or have 2 extremely fast ones? It's basically what it is, you know. So that happens there. And this evaluation only happens when this angle is in the right place. So this isn't going to be subtracting every single frame. It's only going to be when this angle is less than our aim skill, which is, you know, frame rate dependent, but like we said. And 2, here's another thing about it. This will keep the turret from just, you know, firing whenever. You know, it's kind of dumb when, you know, there's not an enemy there, but he's firing stuff. So, but yeah, I think that will be very much cheaper for us. I'm pretty happy that I just you know, just seeing that too, because that's a lot of performance. You may not think it, but trust me, that little bit of change right there will give you some frames. So I think this is a long enough video for you guys for 45 minutes. And I'm pretty sure I probably explained it as well as I could. No, I mean, in the past I haven't done the best job for explaining why this is happening. But I'm pretty positive this one will be a lot easier for you to understand. I mean, I know this is a lot of code, and I plan on going through a lot of it, but like I always say, it's a work in progress, right? Change some stuff, see if this is a little better, which is a little worse, which I was told and I was reading that this quaternion.slurp is more expensive than vector3.lerp. So I have been experimenting which one's cheaper, and it is looking like quaternion.slurp is more expensive, but I'll let you know how that experiment goes because I'm profiling it individually to see which one is worse and which one's actually better. So I'll let you guys know about that one sometime, because I'm juggling school, work, all that stuff. So I'm pretty busy guy. So, but I am working on projects and stuff like that to get some videos out to you guys so you guys can learn and stuff. So take care, and I hope this explanation kind of helps you. And like, hit subscribe. I've got plenty of content to help you guys. I hope so. And take her easy. And this is Saturday, so, well, technically Sunday for me, but have yourself a good drink or whatever you do on a Saturday night. Play some games, blow some stuff up, call your old lady, call your mom, But peace, and I'm out of here.